What do these people have in common? Suzanne Summers, Steven Spielberg, Cher, Pat Sajak, Diane Keaton, Sylvester Stallone, Linda Ronstadt, Bill Clinton, and Donald Trump. They're all 71. I am not yet. But every day in the USA, 10,000 people turn 65. And in the next 2 decades, another 65 million Americans will hit the big 7-0. We baby boomers, born 1946 to 1964, were the biggest generation in history until those millennials came along. They're aged 19 to 35, and they will be outnumbered by the younger so-called Generation Z, those now 18 and younger. Yet we outnumbered boomers, people my age, remain the most consequential generation. Fact, boomers have the most money. Nielsen calls them the most valuable generation for marketers because they hold 70% of the disposable income in the USA, and they're about to get more. On July 1, 2016, something began and it will never end. That day, the oldest baby boomers turned 70 and a half, the age at which, by law, they are required to begin withdrawing from IRA accounts. This money, squirreled away for decades and earning interest, is now flooding the retail economy. Baby boomers, the most consequential generation, are not set in their ways, and they are tech savvy. Although we do occasionally ask a teenager for a tech assist, boomers are tech savvy. One reason young people are fleeing Facebook for other social media platforms is that their parents and grandparents are there. 83% of boomers conduct online research before making major offline purchases, which busts another myth that as we get older, we're so set in our ways and so brand loyal that we don't consider new products. Baloney. Boomers are lifelong experimenters, to our parents' horror way back when. If weed is legal in your state, look who's in the store. Boomers are health conscious. They walk. Diet is of extreme interest. Baby boomers purchase 77% of all prescription drugs and 61% of over-the-counter drugs. Already expecting to live longer than any previous generation, they spend on teeth whitening and cosmetic surgery. And the golden years are now. Boomers are empty nesters. Heck, they're grandparents. There were 40 million grandparents in the USA in 1980. There will be 80 million in 2020. Baby boomers control 80% of all leisure travel spending. They've got the time and the money. So who are we? Let's ask Fred Jacobs, president of Detroit-based Jacobs Media. Fred is a research guy who has a gift for explaining things in more understandable terms than many research people tend to. He will blush when I say this. But Fred, more or less, invented my favorite kind of radio, classic rock. Fred Jacobs, welcome.
Holland, thank you. It's great to be here. And you know, I kind of think of myself as a data whisperer. I mean, that's really what it is with the research, trying to get through the data and really come up with the findings that really matter.
Well, you're a great storyteller when you find that stuff. The Trump presidency is the best thing that's ever happened to cable news and talk radio. Most days, people younger than you and I are horrified by what's in the news, but we boomers have seen this movie before. 50 years ago, it was called 1968. Only then the music was better. You've done umpteen focus groups and research projects and interviews, and you're a great listener. Read the room. What is the frame of mind of people our age these days, and what do we worry about?
Well, we're still trying to get good tickets to the Eagles concerts and when the Stones come back through, right? I mean, it's always about getting good seats. But right now, Holland, it's really more health, heart, and pocketbook, right? I mean, boomers are more concerned about their 401ks and making sure that because they're living longer, that their quality of life, as they obviously are in senior years, Medicare, that they've got enough money to last. So it really has come down to the basics, right? Just health and money. Those are the big concerns that they're really thinking about now.
By the accepted definition of baby boomers, born 1946 to 1964, boomers today are 54 to 72 years old. Is it a mistake to view them monolithically, to consider them as one age group?
It's always been a mistake, whether they were in their 20s or now, as you indicate, they're in their 60s. Really, within that big group, there are all kinds of demographic slices. There are different types of boomers. Clearly, the early boomers missed some of the crazy 1968 stuff that you talked about, then the middle generation that was right in the heart of it, and then there are younger boomers who really grew up for the most part in the 70s, and they missed a lot of that. And those kinds of life-changing experiences, the things that happen to you in your formative years, whether it's the music you're exposed to or when you went to school, all that has a very permanent impact on the kind of person that you are today.
Thus, what you've done with classic rock, is this music being discovered by people now the age we were when these songs were current?
That's the crazy part of it, right? When you think about boomers when they were teens, they never in their wildest dreams would have listened to their parents' music. It would just be unthinkable. But the crazy part of today is that many, many millennials now, and we see this consistently in the Nielsen ratings, have adopted classic rock as a primary go-to source of music. There's a lot of different reasons why that is, but I think part of it is that they clearly have an understanding that this is some of the greatest music ever made, and people will be listening to Led Zeppelin and the Beatles 100 years from now, just the same way that we enjoy classical music. So classic rock really has truly stood the test of time.
Yeah, and after all, these songs were made for people that age to begin with, although I do have one complaint. I loved the Christmas music on the FM stations last month, but must that be the only time of year we get to hear the Beach Boys? I mean, there's really a little more to their repertoire than Little Saint Nick, am I right?
You are right, and you know, that whole oldies thing, broadcast radio really has an issue, and this is sort of a boomer bias, if you will, but as you know, 25 to 54 years old is the advertising agency sweet spot in the radio business, and sad to say, Beach Boys fans tend to be on the north side of that demographic range.
Yeah, that's crazy with all the money we have to spend. Now, recent presidential potty mouth has caused such a fuss that Trump actually felt the need to assure us he's not a racist. His were the words of a 71-year-old. Does your sense of younger people affirm the notion that prejudice fades with each generation, and does it vary by region?
I think that is the trend, Holland, that clearly the younger generation today, even though I think we may have thought of ourselves as being liberal and free and all of that back in the Woodstock generation, but in fact, millennials today are exceptionally open-minded. They clearly appreciate and demand diversity. And interestingly enough, they are into some of the same types of causes that baby boomers were when they were young. I think the environment is a great example of that. Earth Day really came into being in the early 70s. That was very much a boomer initiative. And here today, young people are especially zoned in on the environment and ecology and global warming and all of those issues. So in some ways, we actually see in our millennial research some of the same patterns that we saw back in the day when boomers were young.
Yeah, I think there's a bum rap on millennials as being shrugging and monosyllabic, but they do seem to have that social conscience akin to these protest marches you and I were doing before we both turned blonde, huh?
Yeah, and I think, thank you, but yeah, I think the Trump administration has probably turbocharged all of that. My son is 26 years old, living in Los Angeles, and he has attended a number of protest marches in the past year. And that's something I never would have thought could have possibly happened again. And yet, again, what goes around comes around, right?
Thank you, Fred Jacobs from Jacobs Media, and Jake Apps, if you need one. Fred's website is jacobsmedia.com. I appreciate you joining us from the Motor City, where some of the best music in our lives was born. And let me know if you find those Eagles tickets. And that's The Big Picture. If you missed any part of this week's show, or if you want to share it, you can, where you'll find all our shows at youtube.com/thebigpictureRT. You can watch us anytime on any device. And if you see us somewhere else, you can also watch RT America on DirecTV channel 321. I hope you will be here next week, because it'll be just days before President Trump's very first State of the Union address. We're going to speak with a presidential historian and revisit some of the more memorable moments in State of the Union histories from various presidents over the years. It should be interesting, so I hope you'll be here. Thanks for watching, and question more.